Okay, in this video, this is the second part to chapter 6. I'm going to show you a way to reuse some of your code. In this case, if you notice, we had lab 5 code right here, if else statements, and you might say to yourself, I'm having to retype this header every time, I'm having to retype this welcome message every time, and I'm having to, let's say, I have some common themes between these different labs. Can I reuse this as, let's say, a starter for my code in lab 6? And so although it is possible for you, and many of you have probably gotten to this point where you kind of copy this and then you create the new file and you paste it in there, I'd like to show you a more, let's say, modern approach to this. I'm going to select this file right here, just click it once, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to make a clone of this file. That way all of this and then this and even all of the code down here will be, let's say, brought together into a new file. And so in our words, our technical speak for programming, we call this refactoring. And if you notice, I can right click, but if I right click on this, I actually get this pop-up menu, which you might have been using already. And if you notice, there's a lot of features in here that we have not used or even explored yet. What I'd like to suggest to you is that you can actually use this one right here. So refactor in our world of programming is kind of like saying edit or change or modify or update, but we use the word refactor to say that we need to not just refactor or change this file, but we want to make sure that this doesn't break all of these other files in here as well. It's uncommon for us to write a single file and have that be our application. Normally we have 2 or 3 or 10 or 20 different files inside of a single program or a single application, and refactoring is something that you want to know about, and it's not hard to do, especially if you're using, let's say here, PyCharm. Refactoring is given to you as one of the options for your menu. In this case, I don't want to rename the file. I want to let if else remain as its own file, but what I want to do is I want to duplicate this file into a regular traditional, then let's say new file. Our option for this is called copy file. Now it really should be called clone because that's what it's doing in the background, but you know, we wrote copy file as its extension, so be it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually copy this file. I'm just going to click it, and then it says, what do you want to name this to? Now in this case, and_or_evaluation is the name of our file, and if you notice, it's already got the .py. So I don't want to lose that, but I'm going to highlight and type in here and then an underscore or and an underscore evaluation, evaluation. So and or evaluation. Now if you watch the files over here, once I press OK, you'll see that if else will still live right here in my repository. But above this code comments, a new file is going to be inserted right there. So I'm going to click OK, watch the file list, and you can see that that and or evaluation now is in there. And I can double click on this and you can see I still have my if else file right here. It's 100% there, and I have my and or evaluation. Now notice at the top of both of these two files, this multi-line comment right here is complaining. And I have a warning for this file, and I have a warning on this file. And so if you're looking at this and you're like, look, it says duplicated code fragment. This is a helper for us, but you, student of computer science, this is how teachers catch you. This is duplicated code inside of 2 different files. If this were a student's file and this were a different student's file, right when I open up this file, it says, hey, there's duplicated code between these 2 files. If I were to download, let's say, 10 students' submissions and 2 students had the same code in here, it will indicate to me, it'll warn me. It'll say, you already have this code somewhere else. So this, as we say, is a a method, and this is simply a way for us to look and see whether or not we already have the code. If we download 2 files from the internet and we downloaded it twice accidentally, this is the editor saying you don't need this file, this is already there. But I'm showing you this as a refactoring exercise to help you understand that it's not even like I have to beg through or go through and look at every single individual line. I can simply look at 2 files in one folder and it'll tell me they're the same. Now we're not after the same file here, and I want to make sure that I'm only updating one. So I'm going to close this if-else one, and now what I can do is I can go after this evaluation. In fact, what I'm going to do, I'm simply going to highlight everything through the end of my file and get rid of it because I don't need that in here. And notice that my error went away. As soon as I wiped out a bunch of code at the bottom, it still should warn me that there are 9 lines that are duplicated in here, but it's not going to at this point. So I'm going to go 6, and I'm going to say this is going to be and, or, we'll say it like this, multiple evaluations using and I'll do or. So I can say multiple, M-U-L-T-I-P-L-E, multiple evaluations using and or. I'm also going to reduce this. And I can grab this right here. I can copy you, and I can drop you right in there. And this is multiple evals in modern and traditional formats. Okay, so the idea is that for us, we're going to do both inline, so we're going to do that multiple EVALS in modern and traditional formats. The rest of this is the same, right? So license is the same, it's still August, it's getting to be September soon, but all author is still the same. So now I've got my, I've got a setup. This is quicker now, and in truth, we really do want to be able to, streamline the writing of our code, and it's good practice for us to make sure the first thing we do is handle our header. I'm going to, from the lab files, I actually, in here, I grabbed the steps of this, and I'm also going to copy this out. I'm going to bounce over here. So this is my algorithm. This is my to-do list in some ways. I want to initialize the data and report the values, use the input statement to prompt the user to give a some input in there, use the chained operation, and you saw this in the overview approach, use the separate comparisons and what have you. So let's go ahead and initialize the data first on here. I'm going to keep my warnings and errors in line. I have 2 values which I'm asked to create, the min and the max. And so let me go ahead and just type these in here. So the min, in this case, is going to equal 0, so that's going to be our lower bound. The max in here is going to be 256. And the reason I selected this value is because there should be an equal sign, because if you're looking at bytes, so 0 to 256, in this kind of thing where a bit or a byte can be a value from 0 to 255, in this case I'm just simply using a little bit of computer science kind of lingo on this. So we initialize the data and report the values, and so in this case I'll simply print out, and I'll use a formatted print statement. I'm going to inject some values in here. So the min and the max are the minimum and the maximum values. So it's going to print 0 and 256 are the min and the max values. And if I go ahead and run this just to make sure I'm kind of still in line with my code in here, you can see, welcome to lab 6. It's got this single break right here, new line, which is that break line right there. And it says 0 and 256 are the min and the max values. So I'm okay where I'm at right now. I've handled this. Next thing I want to do is I'd like to invite the user to participate with the code. And so in this case, I'm going to user value. This is going to be the value. So user value is going to be our variable that the user's data is going to go into. And I want to make sure that I'm going to cast this to an integer. Why? Because the min is an integer. You can tell it's a numeric value with no decimal point. It's not wrapped in quotations. And this, the max, is also an integer value, and it's also not wrapped in quotations. So I'm going to cast the entire value of an input statement into there. So input, and if you notice in here, I simply, input. So I have an input statement with its parameter values wrapped entirely in the casting of an input statement. So whatever the user gives me, I'm going to go ahead and cast it to an integer and then save it to user values, which I'll then compare against these two values here. So my input statement here, I'll also use a formatted print statement, and I'm simply going to say to the user, please enter a number from 0 to 256. I guess I'm typing in here. So please enter a number from 0 to 256, and I'll do a space so that when the user does go to prompt this, it doesn't look so crazy on there. And then we're going to go ahead and print that value to the screen. In some ways, I can take this print statement down here and say, and just update it and say, let's say, your value is, and then I can simply in here say user value of type, and then here I'll also go with this type. So we've used this type expression before, and I'm going to take user value one more time, and I'm going to show you why this isn't syntax highlighting for me here, right? And so you say of type user value. I'm going to highlight this whole expression here. So when it's highlighted, then I'm going to do shift and do an open curly brace. Shift, open curly brace, and so it's going to print out the type of this, which should print out int. I'm going to go ahead and run this. I like to just make sure I could say 222, for example, in here. And so if I make this be just a little bit larger here so we can see, please enter a number from 0 to 256. See how I got that single space in there? That was given to me from right there, where I added a space right there. So your value is this. I'm going to add a tab right here, so tab that in right there. And if I wanted to, I could tab in right here. Because I'm using this formatted print statement right here, I can start to do some, let's say, different kinds of, so 299, I can add any value in here, but whatever value it is, 299, type class int. Now that I have an integer, I can feel comfortable comparing it to this integer and comparing it to this integer here. So let's go to the next one here. We're going to do this chained, this modern Pythonic evaluation here. And what we know is we want this. We want an if, and then we're going to compare a value, and a value. So we're going to have these three values which we're going to compare in here. Now we don't need these parentheses. I'm adding them in here so the interpreter here doesn't actually finish my work. But this center value in here is going to be user value. So user value is going to sit in the center here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have some value over here, a minimum value maybe, some value over here, a maximum value maybe, and I'm going to compare the minimum value against user value and compare user value against the maximum value. Now we know we have the min, so I can simply put the min over here on this, the left-hand side of the expression. And we also know we have this value here, the max value over here, and I can put the max value over here. Don't forget, we're going to use these operators here, and the operators have to have more than just a little space in here. They need to actually be separated fully. So in here, if I want to make sure that the min is less than user value, I can simply use this less than operator. And because the min value is 0, I want to make sure that 0 is less than this, not less than or equal to. I don't want to accept 0. I'll accept any value 1 through whatever. And this will then evaluate like this. However, for the max value, I want to allow 256 as well as 255. So here in this one, I'm going to do less than or equal to right here. So I've got my chained expression here. This is a statement of its own, saying if the min is less than user value, and also this is a statement of its own, saying if the user value is less than or equal to my max. And then in this case, it's just going to be a formatted print statement. So I'll say in here, your value is, and then I'm going to print out user value. Oh, I've typed this. No, and so what I really want in here is I want to say this. I'd like to say that the user's value in here, okay, and then I need to speak the words, is greater than the min, which is in this case the min, okay, and also less than, and if I want to, I can press enter here and it's just going to continue my statement on the next line, and less than the max, and I can enter in the max value here. So this statement works for us because the min is in fact here, user value is greater than the min. Do you get that? If the min is less than user value, that also means that user value is greater than the min. So I can say this properly. It is greater than the min. I could also reword this and say the min is less than user value, and actually let me do that. So I can say the min, and in here I could say the min, okay, is less than user value in here. And user value, I guess I'm going to have to do it like this, and user value, I'll down here say is less than or equal to the max, and I can have the max here. So really I'm saying this, the min right here is less than user value, and also user value is less than or equal to the max. Okay? If I run this, let's see if we get this right. So let's say I give it a -2. Your value -2 is of class int, but it didn't get evaluated in this statement. Why? Because -2 does not equate to true right here. Okay? If I give it a 0, I should get the same effect. This statement never prints. But if I run this and I give it even a 1, you'll see that 1 is, in fact, 0 is less than 1, and 1 is less than or equal to 256. Let me run this again with 256, and you'll see that 0 is in fact less than 256, the number that we entered here, and 256 is also less than or equal to the max of 256. If I run this now and I give it, I wanted to run that one more time and give it like 299, the statement again doesn't evaluate. So what we want to do in this case is we'd like to pick out the rest of these statements. So let's do an elif in here and say the min is greater than, if the min in this case, which is this value, is greater than this, so if 0 is greater than user value in here, I'll colon that, and I'm going to copy this print statement because it's becoming difficult to just paste them or to type it every time, but I want to make sure that these words represent properly what this evaluation is. So if the min, which is 0, is actually greater than user value, then we can say the min here is greater than user value. I don't need the rest of this in here because this. Now if you are copying and pasting, notice you still have to handle, and you can see I'm getting an error here. So I haven't closed my F string here. I need to actually use that single tick, and I also haven't closed off my print statement opening parentheses. So I need to go like that. So I get both of these in here. Let me run this again. And if you remember, the last time I entered -2, nothing evaluated. But now the min is greater than -2. So you can see that this statement is evaluated, but this statement didn't end up being true, so we don't actually run that. Let's also run one where we check if the max is less than if we check the max is less than or greater than the other value. So we'll do another elif, so else if the max in here, if the max, not is exactly equal, but if the max is less than here, user value, okay, so I thought I typed max there. If the max is less than user value, so user value is 299 and the max is 256, then one more time we want a print statement down here, and I'm going to go ahead and just paste one in. So then the max, and we would say the max in here is less than user value. So now if I enter 299 in here, and I hope that you're realizing that as I write code, I'm evaluating the correctness of the code. That's why I keep running this code again and again. So in this case, the min is greater than user value, which is not evaluated up here. And I'm evaluating if the user value is in fact bigger than the max by saying the max is less than this. Now I should be able to get all of the different conditions in here. So if I give it a -2, then this statement right here should run. And it does. 0 is greater than -2. If I run it again and I give it 111, which should be this multiple evaluation statement where 111 is greater than the min and also 111 is less than or equal to the max in here, and run this, then this statement should print, and it does. Finally in here, if I give it a number that's way bigger than this, so 999 for example, I should evaluate this statement right here, and in fact we see that it is. The max is less than 999. In this case, there also can be an else statement in here, but it should be simply this. This should never be reached, is really what it is. Be reached. Why? Because I've handled both less than or equal to, I've handled less than the min, I've handled greater than the min, and also values which are in between these. I'll pick up the next video to do the other two comparisons in here, which are part of the lab.